Hello friends, for today's video we're going to be looking at Season 2 of the original Avatar: The Last Airbender, specifically episodes 6 through 10. Last week, when going through episodes 1 through 5, I was discussing how I felt like episode 1 was fantastic, had some really devastating moments for Aang, and also there was a lot of realization that even your allies might end up being your enemy in some ways, or they might present threats to you and those you care about. I thought episode 1 was fantastic. Episode 2 with Zuko was amazing, even though we did have kind of sillier moments with Aang and Katara and Sokka. And then episodes 3 through 5, I think, had some really introspective moments for Zuko. Very devastating, very tragic, but I think necessary. And then Aang's plotline kind of continued with the silliness. I was hopeful that those would be among some of the lesser episodes of the season, because of course there's always going to be the top episodes and the ones that maybe aren't as strong. The Great Divide in season 1 apparently is the agreed upon episode. I'm currently feeling that was accurate, because episodes 6 through 10 I thought were so good. I don't think I have really a whole lot of negative things to say, which is great. Not that I've had a ton of negative things to say, at least in my opinion and perception of this, but episodes 6 through 10 I just thought were so good. So jumping into it with episode 6, as always, I'll be referencing my notes as I jot down impressions, since it is my first time watching, that I had while consuming each episode, and then keep this very casual. So, Sokka and his bag. If you don't remember, this episode is basically pro wrestling / Aang meets his earthbending master. And Sokka, at the beginning, keeps deliberating on whether or not he wants to buy this one bag. For some reason, I don't know why they decided to include that Sokka moment, but they did, and it was hilarious. And then after he buys the bag, I laughed pretty hard, and then I was like, okay, hold on, I need to pause this and write it down. He said, "What was I thinking? I don't need a new bag."
I don't need a new bag.
So much of this show's humor is so random, and I know this is the most... this in and of itself is a random thing to point out, but I kind of want to highlight how brilliant I think it is to have these ridiculous, goofy moments, this kind in particular, because so much of what makes life fun and beautiful and makes people quirky and weird and unique are these silly moments. And when every single joke feels like there's a big setup for it and there's an obvious punchline, those sorts of things, when you see that in shows, you kind of can't help but be like, I don't know, have you interacted with funny people before? Some of the funniest moments in life are just pure chance, and it's just the way someone says something, or how out of nowhere a statement can come. They had some moments like that, of course, in the first season. For example, when in the first season Katara and Sokka are trying to trick the Fire Nation guards into thinking they're using earthbending, and she's being super obvious, like, I'm gonna use earthbending now. And then the guard is like, oh my gosh, that flying lemur just used earthbending or something. They're like, no, that kind of thing. Or in that same episode, actually, when they're like, was it a bison or a buffalo? Just stuff like that, where it's like, they didn't need to include any of that. And those jokes kind of come out of nowhere, but they're always great, and I love them. So I know it's the most random of things to highlight, but I thought it was good and worth noting. So Sokka and his bag was great, especially because right after that line, he's like, why'd you let me buy this?
Why'd you let me buy this?
Then, of course, there's the whole fact that pretty much this episode's main plot line is looking at pro wrestlers, WWE SmackDown type of thing. And that amused me very much. The fact that the one character's name was Big Bad Hippo, and then I had to write this quote down too, where the opponent's like, you might be big, but you ain't bad. It was just so dumb that I had to chuckle about it and share it because I thought it was great. Anyway, so the more important things in this, I don't think I'm smart by any means for figuring this out, but obviously we got the clue that Aang needs to find the one who listens, and I was like, okay, it's gonna be Toph. It's gonna be that character, and it was, and it's not hidden or anything like that, but I'm glad that we didn't drag this out too much, because that would have been frustrating if half the season we're trying to convince her to be the not firebending, the earthbending teacher. That would have been annoying. So I'm glad they got with it while simultaneously exploring her and her family dynamic. It's actually really tragic. She's somewhat of an abrasive character, which is both fitting of her background and how she's been treated, and the earthbending that she likes to use, which I really, really enjoy. But her background is really sad, and I wrote the quote, "for your own good." This idea that I feel like in this instance, we have to remind ourselves she is a child. So on one hand, it's like, okay, well, yeah, parents do often do things for your own good. But I think sort of extrapolating and pulling that and what they were thematically going for, that statement is used so often in very controlling relationships. And this idea that isolating people, keeping them from friends, keeping them from living life to the fullest, keeping them from the things they enjoy, it's, quote, "for their own good." I think that so many people can resonate with that. And if anybody's experienced that, I can imagine that Toph's, that line in particular, but also just in general, how everything is shown with Toph, how much that probably meant to a lot of people, especially because her parents don't hate her. They love her. They accept her. They just don't accept her wants and wishes for her own life. So they don't actually respect her. It's a very controlling kind of love. And I think that that's actually really sad. If they had just been awful and like, no, you will always stay inside because you're stupid and I can't let you embarrass me or anything. Like if it was something like that, I think that would lack the nuance that these sorts of situations actually tend to lean toward. So I was really sad for her with that. It was kind of a sad way to end the episode. I mean, she does kind of go off with Aang and them, and she was like, yeah, they said I could, and lied about it, which I was expecting. But I felt for her a lot. I think that she's a good addition to the team. Episode 7, Zuko Alone. Maybe one of my favorite episodes of the entire series so far, not just the second season. Zuko Alone, great episode. And I like that it had this sort of Western feel to it. Everything about it, I loved everything about it. So I wrote Western vibes. I also, I don't know why I put this in quotes. I think because I literally said this. This isn't a quote from the show. I wrote, "Oh no, what happened to his mom?" So as soon as his mom came onto the screen, I'm like, oh, and that was what I said. Which, you know, I probably didn't need to say. I could have just wondered it. But as soon as they showed his mom, I'm like, no. And and then I wrote, did his mom go in his place? Because his sister Azula, continuing to be awful, even in the past, was like, you know, they're gonna kill you, right? You know, just her annoying, obnoxious self. And he's like, you're lying, you always lie. And she's like, it's true. The setup, if you've forgotten, in his flashbacks, his father wants to now be put in line for the throne now that it's been noted that Iroh's son has died, because there's essentially nobody to continue on after Iroh. And as punishment, Azula is saying that their father is now going to kill Zuko so that their father can realize the pain that Iroh is experiencing. And Zuko's like, that's not true, that's not true. And then later you see his mom come in. She says something along the lines of, just know I love you and everything I do is for you. And then she's dead and their grandpa's dead. And then his dad is also now in line for the throne. But just that moment where she comes in and says, like, just so you know, everything I do is because I love you. I was like, no, is she going to go in his place? Is that story true? And it's a little ambiguous, because you're like, wait, but if she went in his place, then why would the grandpa have died? So his dad clearly did something, but the specifics we don't quite know. And I don't know if Zuko quite knows the specifics either. Does Azula? I don't know. I don't quite know what happened. I have guesses, but sometimes this show, when they withhold information from you, they're doing so intentionally because you will get the full picture later. So I'm just wondering if we're going to get the full picture later, or if we'll never know. We'll just always speculate. But poor Zuko's mom. Zuko obviously used to be precious. Anyway, I wrote, Zuko always keeps fighting, because that was something that Iroh, you know, had sent back in a message when he was off, and you see on the knife that, you know, always keep fighting. So I feel like that's ingrained in him. He has to always go, always go, always go, which is why I feel like his current circumstances are so challenging and difficult for him to process and accept, because in his mind, if he's not moving forward and he's not doing something, if he's not fighting, then what is he even doing? I don't think he knows how to stop. I did write, cool fight scene. If you don't recall, in the present of this episode, present day, there are earthbender guards who are definitely abusing their power among the villagers. And so Zuko is standing up to them. Great fight scene. I feel like the fight scenes have gotten better this season than they were. Not that they weren't good in the first season, but every time one of them happens, I'm like, wow, this is really good. So, and he's just cool. Zuko's just cool. So, cool fight scene. Speaking of the random funny moments, this is a perfect example. This is really the only funny moment in this episode, but it was very funny when Zuko goes to give the child the knife that Iroh had given him, and he tells the kid, read the inscription, and the kid says, made in the Earth Nation, and then he's like, no, the other inscription. But that episode was sad, and when he just kind of wanders off alone, truly Zuko, because the title is Zuko Alone. It's not just Zuko is without Iroh. I feel like even how it ends, like, he does all of this, he actually does good for people, he stands up for other people, and yet he's alone. It's sort of has multiple meanings, even though it's very straightforward. But great episode. Episode 8, The Chase. Love this one too. Another great one. I do like that the show continues to have people in all versions of how we are as human beings. We can be grating, we can be annoying, we can be rude. And I like that those dynamics play out. And I like that we're not shying away from showing that. And I think it makes sense that it occurred between these two, because Katara does often have to kind of rally the group. She kind of has to be the one to make sure they're always moving forward, kind of monitors everybody's emotional well-being all the time. But as a result of that being the role that she's kind of found herself in, it makes sense that this person who's very much a loner and doesn't want to partake in the fact that everybody's supposed to band together and everything, it makes sense that the two of them would clash. And I thought it was realistic. It was a little much, it was a little on the nose, but I still like that they had it. I also wrote, Aang learns a valuable lesson about telling someone to calm down, because of course we all know that when people are upset and someone's like, calm down, that never ever makes anybody actually calm down. So he says that to Katara at one point. She's like, I am calm, and she has this really wild expression on her face. Also, okay, are we gonna get a lot of jokes, like blind girl jokes in this season? Because I was kind of taken aback that Katara said, the stars look beautiful tonight. Too bad you can't see them. To Toph. I was surprised. I'm like, Katara, you crossed a line there, okay? I was not expecting that. Toph took it she didn't take it well, because of course then they argued some more, but man, the petty really came out. In my notes, I put, oh dang, Zuko is following them. I wasn't expecting, I was like, are they all gonna meet up? That was in my notes too, because I was not expecting potential crossover so early, even though we're already 8 episodes in. When Aang defends Appa, I was like, yay. And then Iroh shows up. I wrote in my notes, Iroh, with a bunch of exclamation points. This has got to be boring. Now I'm just giving you a recap of like, I got excited, and then I got excited some more. And then also this was funny. I did get excited when Katara and Sokka are having to fight Azula's minions, I'll call them, because I forgot their names. They're fighting them, and they're kind of losing by a lot, Sokka and Katara. And then Aang comes in, or Appa comes in and just smacks the both of them with his tail. And it's like, yay. I love Appa so much. I was really excited, though. I wrote my notes, a quote, even though it's not a difficult thing to remember, where Iroh says, I've been tracking him. I was like, I knew it. And I thought it was so sweet and quite wise when he's giving really good advice to Toph and sort of helping her see that sometimes you need help, sometimes you need to tell people what they mean to you, and he's sort of helping her come out of her shell in that way and learn to be a part of a group. And I thought that her response to him was so sweet when she said, maybe you should tell your nephew you need him too. And I was like, no, yeah, please do that. Because I really, really want Zuko to just be happy and to have familial love and accept it. You're allowed to accept that love, Zuko, please. Anyway, after that, I wrote, Iroh and Zuko reunited, and then I said, not Zuko devastated. So, oh man, all he said was leave, and I'm sure even if it's been a long time since you've watched the show, you probably know what I'm talking about. Maybe you don't, because who knows how long ago you've watched it. But when Katara and Sokka find Aang, they meet up with Aang again, and Azula has just fought them all. And she manages to get away, but she hurt Iroh. And it's unclear Iroh's state, if he's okay or not. And, you know, Katara comes forward like, I can try to heal him, and Zuko just yells. And the way he says it, I was like, oh. Well, Iroh can't be dead. There's no way. But also, it's just to see that devastation in Zuko. And also, this is not anything to do with that moment, but when that fight's happened, that fight is fantastic between Aang and Azula and Zuko, the three of them all kind of sort of fighting each other. But when there's a part where they're in this sort of abandoned, rundown building, and Aang runs in, and then there's an edge, and so he very easily just hops across. And when Azula chases after him, she has to sort of keep herself from falling, and she manages to shimmy. And then Zuko just comes barreling through and then falls. I thought that was really funny, as it was like a physical representation of their personalities. I feel like I'm trying to segue out of the emotional moment because it makes me sad to think about. But it was such a good episode. These episodes have been so good. They're all so good. Anyway, episode 9. Bitter work. When they show Iroh with his son. No! What are they doing? Why are they doing this to us? We knew he had a son who had died, but when they show a little clip of him, because he, in healing, is remembering playing with his son, and it's sad. And I feel bad for him. I just love Iroh and Zuko together. They're such polar opposites in so many ways. But when Zuko's like, I have to go after her. And then he's like, yeah, I'm sure you're gonna... I don't know why I'm trying to do his voice. I'm sorry.
I know what you're gonna say. She's my sister and I should be trying to get along with her.
He's like, no, she's crazy.
No, she's crazy.
If you can even get Iroh to be like, yeah, that person, no, they need to be taken out, then I feel like that's how you know. A good training episode in general, because training episodes, sort of the fighting montage or learning how to enhance a skill or get better at something, oftentimes it seems like a necessary episode so that it doesn't look like the character leveled up for no reason. But often it feels like they're kind of empty and you're just sort of watching, oh, okay, look, now they can lift something that they couldn't lift before. I really think that they put in a lot more oomph in this, and they had good parallels between Zuko trying to train with Iroh and Aang trying to train, and the different ways in which they get held back and the ways that they get frustrated and how they persevere through it. I, in general, love when... I think that while this episode maybe wasn't as hard-hitting as The Storm, I still like whenever they show Zuko and Aang on these almost like parallel paths. It also makes me wonder why... Is Zuko more important than we think he is? Because Aang is the obvious, chosen one type of character. He's the Avatar. And I get that Zuko doesn't need to be the chosen one for him to get a good amount of time dedicated to him. I think that's part of what's great about this show, is that he just is somebody on the other side, and yet we really develop his character a lot. And I love that. I love that the side characters get fleshed out. But it just makes me wonder if there's something else to Zuko and the way that they're always kind of showing. Are they just showing those parallels because they're showing the way in which all of us have something that we can connect through, or is there something more to it? I thought when he was the blue spirit in the episode last season, I could have sworn he used a different kind of bending when he was helping Aang escape the prison. I could have sworn, which is why for half a second I'm like, oh, is it Zuko? But maybe I'm just misremembering, or maybe he was using fire, but he was using it in a form that didn't look like fire or something. I don't know. Getting back to this episode, I was so sad when Zuko was trying to learn how to transfer lightning, and he's like, I'm ready. And then Iroh's like, no, I'm not gonna shoot lightning at you. And he's like, fine, I'll seek it out myself, basically. And there's the quote about everything, how it says exploding in my face, like everything always does. And then we got the part that I was like, I don't want to see this, when he kind of just collapses to the ground and is broken, and I didn't want to see I didn't want to see Zuko broken. It makes me really sad. I know that's kind of the key word, I feel like, it was the key word from last batch of episodes. It seems to be the key word for this. This is going to be my feeling the whole season, I think, is just sad. It was a great moment, though, and I think as much as I'm jokingly saying, no, I don't want to see it, I do feel like these moments are important to see for the growth of these characters. One last thing I'll note about this episode, and then we'll move on to the next one. And this is just a maybe prediction, I don't know, but I figured I'd mention it because then you can laugh at me if I'm wrong, or maybe I can reference back to this and being like, oh, I maybe was onto something. But regardless, Iroh in season 1, at the end of the season, it's alluded to, pretty much directly said that Iroh has knowledge of the spirit realm, and why he has knowledge is not known to us. How much he has is not known to us. Has he gone there before? So we don't really have those answers. But having seen him playing with his son when he is on the verge of death, basically, and the fact that he obviously loved his son, and it's sort of his greatest shame, it would seem, is the fact that he lost that city and his son all at once, his reputation, everything, basically. I wrote in my notes, does Iroh know about the spirit world because he tried to get his son back? Is that a thing? Do people do that in this world where they try to beg some kind of ancient spirits or something, or they try to... I could see that being something he would have done when he was younger. I don't know. I have no idea. So I just wanted to note that because that could be interesting. And we haven't, unless I'm mistaken, I don't think we've gotten an answer to why he knows about the spirit world. Is it just something he learned about in his training? I don't know. But anyway, if that turns out to be true, that would make me bummed out. Anyway, moving on to episode 10, the library. Not as emotional of an episode until the end. Oh my gosh, what is going to happen? So this episode, the library, awesome. I feel like every fantasy lover, this is just, we need these sorts of moments and imagery in our fantasy, just as like epic, cool, hidden, lost libraries. It's great. And then the owl spirit is so cool and so creepy. This show does a really good job with its spirits. I actually feel like the very first one they showed, the panda one, was probably the worst. Not that it was bad in its design or anything like that. It just was maybe the least interesting and compelling of the spirits, or frightening of the spirits. But the owl was awesome and amazing. The design was so cool. The voice acting, the way they distorted the voice was great. I did feel bad for the owl. I know it ended up presenting a threat to our main characters, but it was kind of right. It wanted to protect knowledge because it was saying humans only ever use knowledge to hurt each other, and that wasn't necessarily untrue. They were seeking knowledge so they could defeat the Fire Nation, which in their eyes is, in the long run, going to save people. But it's still, you know, Sokka's use, the way in which he talks about it, the language he uses is very much like, now we can take them down, now we can defeat them, now we can render them, you know, useless because of the eclipse component. So I just feel bad that the owl was like, I was tricked again. Humans are always like this. And I'm like, no, it's kind of sad because it's kind of true. I feel like it needs a spirit friend. Appa! Why? Why did they take Appa? What are they doing? Don't take Appa away. This was not on my season 2 bingo card. I didn't think we would be separate. I keep talking about, like, if Aang or Zuko, if something happens to Aang or Zuko, I feel like I've been saying that many a time. And I didn't think they would go there, where they would do something. I don't know what's happened to Appa. I imagine he's alive. But I'm like, why? No. And then when Aang is crying, I was like, is Aang gonna go into the Avatar state for Appa? Because I would not blame him if he did. I feel like people need to pay. Don't take Appa. No. So I can't believe this is where episode 10 ended with. I need Appa back. Appa's the best. Any sweet animal companion or mythological creature companion is always pretty much going to be my favorite because they're sweet and pure, innocent little souls. It doesn't matter if they're sassy. It doesn't matter if they mostly just want food and belly rubs. They deserve it. They deserve it. And Appa, Appa already has had it rough, okay? He had to deal with the vines in the stupid swamp, and he was shedding a lot, and that's how they tracked him. So then he was sleepy, and he was collapsing a bunch. Appa needs a break. Anyway, I'm upset. I am upset that that's where we're leaving off. I don't know if I have too much else to say. Justice for Appa. That's it. I'm very upset. But anyway, let me know, what were your thoughts? These episodes were fantastic. I'll calm down and actually talk like a person now. These episodes were wonderful, fantastic, great storytelling, great moments, funny, deep, gutting. I just think that in general, after those first 5, that kind of had some great highs and then some lows. To have just pretty much all highs, except for this tremendous low of taking Appa away, I think that's impressive, and it for me, gives me hope that the rest of the season is going to be like this. Let me know your thoughts on these episodes. Thanks so much for watching. I'm having a great time getting to continuously chat through these episodes with all of you. So thanks for just continuing to make this such a fun experience. Have a great rest of your day, though, and I'll see you later. Bye.